Welcome back, everybody, to episode 27, week 7. It's kind of crazy now that it's been 7 weeks, honestly.
Yeah, 7 weeks since we started season two. It's going by really fast. And this is our second episode that we're dropping in the same week.
Yeah. And then, not to mention, me and Adi are also pre recording our episodes for the next 3 weeks, next week. So that's pretty hectic. We're definitely not doing it in one night because we do our late night episode recordings like right now.
Yeah.
But that's pretty hectic too. But can't wait for you guys to hear those. We have a free talk episode coming. We have a part 2 to this episode coming, and one other one that I'm gonna leave as a little surprise for now. But thank you guys for coming back to listen to episode 27. Let us know how you guys feel about having 2 episodes in one week, if it was overwhelming or not. I know a lot of people are definitely feeling our weed episodes. Um,
Yes. They was like, oh, I see you guys talking about weed and stuff. Like, yeah, definitely for the cannabis and shit. Excuse
yeah,
my
someone
language.
definitely someone had told me, they were like, it would have been super funny if you guys were talking about all this information about marijuana and like smoking it in the video. I was just like, yeah, that would be funny, but that's the point. It would be funny. Because we wouldn't. But thank you for coming back to listen anyways. If you don't already, check out our socials on our Instagram and Twitter at The Way We See It. You can also check out our website. The link is in our social bios, where you can read our blogs that we put every week, our current events that we also have on our Instagram, our resources, citations, and etc. And we also now have our YouTube channel. If you guys do not know, that's where we're now uploading our episodes for our SoundCloud listeners, because we decided to just get rid of SoundCloud and just move to YouTube completely. So you can find our video and audio versions of each episode there, also at The Way We See It. And to everybody else that listens on Apple Podcasts, don't forget to leave a review, a rating. This just helps us to grow our podcast and hear feedback from you guys, especially if you're not contacting us through the website or in our DMs. And yeah, and if you guys also have any ideas for possible future topics, me and Adi occasionally post on our Instagram stories topics that people may want us to discuss. But in case you don't see us doing that anytime soon, you can always DM us on our personal or our podcast social page.
Yes. And now we're gonna get in today's topic. Being that is March, we wanted to dedicate an episode, and we're gonna dedicate a part two of Women's History Month. So I'm gonna ask Tati, why? What's so funny?
I'm just laughing because I'm not the type that for this part of the document that writes like why I want to discuss it. And I just look at it and I just see that I wrote it all caps. Like I must have really been feeling it when I started the
You
document.
were you were very passionate when you wrote your notes. So
Yes.
yeah, Tati, why did you want to discuss, or
So
why you
what
think Women's History Month is important?
so I want to discuss this because I love women. I love everything about us because we are so powerful. That's literally what I said in the notes, guys, in all caps. But all seriousness, no, yeah, I love us. I love everything about women. I love just like everything that we can do, and it just frustrates me so much sometimes to see women belittle themselves and think that they can't do certain things. Like, no, it's now 2021, 21st century. You could do anything you put your mind to. Like, yeah, we are still fighting for our rights and other things, no matter what it is, like, because believe it or not, there's a lot of things that women are still fighting for today. But even though we have those issues on the side, you can still put your mind to anything that you want to do. So yeah, I just feel like it's definitely an important thing to discuss, especially to help create awareness on those issues that a lot of people like um undermine and may not think of often. Like, because I know for one, something a lot of people may not even like think of that much is like pink tax. Like, taxing women's how would you call it, menstrual.
Sanitary napkins
Yeah, those kinds of things,
and
pads, tampons, those things too.
yeah.
So it's things like that. But what about you, Adi?
Yeah, I think Women's History Month is like important to acknowledge to um honor like all the achievements and that women have accomplished in the past and are continuing to do,
A lot
and
of
also
women.
like being aware of the issues that women still facing and what the rights that we're still fighting for. Like women, like we're powerful beings, we can give birth. And I think, you know, the fact that we can give birth, now I understand that every woman
Yeah.
wants children, but that for to me, that alone, like that's like a beautiful thing, just to carry a human for like 9 months and then push them out. I think that's a beautiful thing. And yeah, like, you know, celebrate you every single day. You know, we know there's a month to dedicate for women, but celebrate yourself every single day. We're strong, we're powerful. And like Tati said, like besides the gender role expectations that we feel pressured by society, and you not feeling like you feel heard in your job or your school because of your gender, like you can still fight, still continue, still being a voice for yourself and for other women as well. And yeah, so shout out to all my women, including transgender women. You guys are in this conversation as well.
Period. And I also added that in one of our side notes, like talking about um how people even self-identify, because sometimes people are women but don't identify as women, so they he, she, her, those kind of pronouns, is it called
Yeah,
pronouns?
pronouns. Yeah.
Yeah, the pronouns. Look at me trying to be an English teacher and I don't even know my English. But nicely said, Adi. Like Adi went into a little bit more depth than me, but that was nicely said. So what is Women's History Month? Every March since 1988 is annual Women's History Month, which acknowledges all the women in history that contributed to women's rights and have helped women to get to where we are now. Within the month of March, we celebrate International Women's Day every March, on the 8th, I believe. And we even made a post on it to celebrate that day, saying to, say you love your parents. Thank you to the people in history that fought to get us to where we are now and that are still fighting, even now in our government politics, whatever, however they can, to continue to fight for those rights. So, adding on to what I just said, Women's History Month originated in 1981 when Congress passed public law, which allowed permission and requested the U.S. president to proclaim the week beginning March 7th, 1982, as Women's History Week. Then in 1987, Congress passed public law, which dedicated the month of March, so the entire month in general, um, of 1987. So it was only that select year, that March, to be as Women's History Month. But then later on, between 1988 to 1994, Congress passed again additional resolutions requesting authorizing the president to dedicate the month of March every year as Women's History Month. And obviously, that was approved because here we are.
Yeah. Here we are talking about it. So, what originally led to women making their mark in history? The women's rights movement began decades before the Civil War, which was between 1861 and 1865. During the 1820s and 30s, most states in the US had extended the franchise to all white men, regardless of how much money or property they had. In response, many reform groups developed religious movement and anti-slavery organizations, and in many of these organizations, women played a critical role in being part of those organizations. Then in 1848, a group of activist women and some men, shout out to them, and shout out to the men today that continue to support women,
Yes,
and some
sir.
men met up in Seneca Falls, New York, to discuss the problem of women's rights. This is known as the Seneca Falls Convention, which was led by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Luceretta Mott. And everyone who attended the convention agreed that American women were autonomous. aka independent, and individuals who deserve their own political identities.
But yeah, period to what Ariana said, we are independent. And I'm definitely gonna get into that for the next part two episode that we have coming up, because that also goes into the misconceptions people have about feminists and feminism, because that's just something else in its own too. But so going on to the next part of this topic, we have the civil rights. So Adi, if you want to continue that part.
Yeah, so after the Civil War ended, the 14th and 15th Amendment of the US Constitution brought up many questions about suffrage and leadership. So, just a reminder, the 14th Amendment, which was ratified in 1868, granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including former enslaved individuals, and guaranteed all citizens equal protections of the laws. And the 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, guaranteed the right to vote could not be denied based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The purpose of this amendment was to grant African American men the right to vote. And women activists used specifically the 15th Amendment to push lawmakers for change for it to be ratified.
Yeah, and continuing after this, after almost a century of protests, the 19th Amendment was ratified on August 18th, 1920. In fact, activists first introduced Congress to ratify the amendment back in 1878, meaning it took 42 years to have the House and Congress grant women the right to vote. And Adi wrote in the notes, 42 years, OMG.
Yeah,
Because no, literally. It took so
that's
long
a
because it was so
mhm.
much of an issue for women to even be allowed to vote. But here's the thing. So I'm about to get into it. So basically, the 19th Amendment states that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. So, in other words, like we said, the given right that allowed women at the time to vote, but also now we see it as it doesn't matter how you self-identify, anybody is allowed to vote. But however, this was still an issue because at the time, Black women were still unable to vote, along with other female minorities such as Asian Americans, Native Americans, Indian Americans, and Hispanic Americans, and whoever else we may have missed out. Believe it or not, but Blacks and other minorities that weren't white weren't allowed to vote until as late as 1965 when the amendment was modified and when the Voting Rights Act was created. Because even going back before I mention the next thing, from what I was reading on all the research documents, was that obviously all men had the right to vote before women. So white men obviously first. Even at that time, they had to modify it a bit because they weren't even including lower class white men to vote. And then later on, they allowed Black people to vote, but then also it goes into the brown paper bag thing. It only depends if you're half white, half Black, then you're allowed to vote. As
The
long
Jim
as
Crow laws.
Yeah, the Jim Crow laws also played a role in that. And I'm going to mention this in the next episode for the part two, but there was one woman specifically. She was Asian American, and she discussed how once white women were um, allowed to vote, her mother or her grandmother had told her that they had said to one of the women, like, okay, now that you're allowed to vote, please help me to get my people to be able to vote. And she was one of the few women that fought very hard to allow other minorities and Black women to be able to vote. And obviously, once it was 1965, which wasn't even 100 years ago, allowed them to vote. So that's so crazy to me too, because at that time, my grandma's alive, so she was not even able to vote. Um, my mom was only born a few years after 1965. My aunts were already born at that time. Like, it's just crazy to me to even know that, like,
Mhm.
something I see my grandma do every 4 years, which is go vote, she wasn't able to do back then when she was obviously of legal age. So that's pretty crazy. And
Yeah.
then later on August 6, 1965, the Voting Rights Act was signed into law, which prohibited racial discrimination in voting, which finally allowed all races, and doesn't matter your color, to vote. So, yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the women and men or anybody who that fought to, for women the right to vote and fought for black and other people of color the right to vote. But we spoke about this in a previous podcast. But even though like anybody that's a citizen um, has the right to vote in America, there's still ways that America tries to find to not have certain people the right to vote. Like for example, if you have a felony, you don't have the right to vote. It depends on the state, but it can be difficult.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
lot of voter suppression
yeah,
still going on. And that's something else I read in that same document where the Asian American woman was talking about, like, what her grandmother or her mother had said to the white woman when they were allowed to vote. But it was like America, their voting system was built on suppression. And believe it or not, in 2020, we still see that. Even back all the way back into the summertime when freaking the preliminaries, is that what it was called?
primaries.
Primaries, yes. When that was going on in Kentucky, remember they had the entire voter suppression, only had one place open, and people were waiting hours to just cast in their vote. And that's something as simple as the primaries. And even that was an issue. And obviously, later on, going to finally election day, they even had to count the votes twice because voter suppression is such a thing. They didn't want to believe that Biden was actually elected president. So we see that in so many ways, from people being felons not allowed to vote, even people that are immigrants and have a green card in America, that have lived here for years, have been here all their lives, even since they were maybe 15, maybe younger. They're still not considered Americans,
Yeah,
and they're not even allowed to cast a vote. So that's sad.
yeah, that's why it's important like to read like the Constitution carefully, like read it and then question:
Yeah.
Is this actually like um for all people?
Literally.
Just think.
And no, literally, guys, last night, I'm gonna get off topic because we have time. But last night for my history class, I had to write a paper. I had two different prompts. I'm not gonna discuss the other one because I don't even remember it, but the prompt that I chose to write about was about the Constitution, and there was three parts to it. It was OD, unnecessary, I tell you. I wish I could just write straight about my opinion instead of having that small little paragraph. But anyways, so it was basically saying, oh, how is the Constitution politically, socially, and economically conservative, meaning for old traditions like um, white men only. They're superior in every way, protect their properties, protect their money, forget the lower class, forget minorities, blacks, everybody, like all that stuff. Or how was the Constitution politically, economically, and socially revolutionary to like help create change? And I was like, no. I was like, that the Constitution is definitely conservative in every possible way, because let's not forget who these freaking founding fathers are. Honestly, I could tell you
Slave
everything.
owners,
Literally, first of all,
rapists.
they're rapists, racist, and one of them even had a sex cult. Like, like, believe it or not, it's true. Yeah, and that's why I've been meaning to watch freaking Hamilton on Disney Plus too, because he's someone I honestly don't know that much information on, but I do know the most part that these founding fathers were all racist and only had in mind the benefits of only white people. So as of 2021, I can definitely see how the Constitution is being used to be revolutionary and creating some changes, but we also have the people in power, which the founding fathers made sure that Congress will always, no matter what they have with checks and balances, if you guys don't know what that is, search it up. Basically, to limit every branch of the government power, but yet Congress has the most power because you can fight for something for years, and once it reaches Congress, they can literally just throw that to the side and be like, no, before that even reaches the president. Congress is always going to have the most more power than the president. They can even do like even declare war without the president's approval. So it's pretty crazy. The only time the president could ever have more control over a Congress, guys, and this is in the Constitution, and like the first two articles, if you need to go and read it. But um, Congress, the only time the president can ever have total control of the government and everything within the United States is in a state of emergency. So, for example, that could possibly be COVID when the pandemic first started. That's when we basically saw a lot of division between the government because we had professionals saying don't go outside, we shouldn't have been doing this before, but then our president was doing this and that, limiting supplies to certain people, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's an example of that. But that document is definitely conservative, and that's why I definitely didn't like also when that Amy girl, whatever her last
Yeah.
name is, got signed into the Supreme Court because she's all for how the Constitution was originally written.
Yeah,
Make it make sense.
she's an originalist, which
Yeah.
means she interprets the Constitution how it was interpreted the year it was
By the
developed.
founding fathers. She interprets it the same way the founding fathers had originally written it. So I was just like, how are you a woman and don't even support women's rights? Like, I don't get it. Like, because at that time when the founding fathers even wrote that document, women couldn't even vote. Like, I really don't understand that concept, and like how people even today, oh my goodness, that's why I will always like, even though yeah, Trump's administration, his years as president, even though that was more of a time for me when I finally started paying attention to politics, but that's why I'm always going to pay attention more to his presidency than anybody else's, because the way I really saw women like really coming out of pocket, like talking about like, oh yeah, he would never do this, yeah, men don't even do this, like literally, like belittling other women, like
Mhm.
literally, like just doing
Yeah.
that, saying that a woman is a liar, a woman belongs in the kitchen. I'm like, how could you think like that? Like, yeah, I understand there are women, which I totally respect, that would that love their family so much and would love to just be there with them all the time and just help them raise them and just to be an eye opener for them, to make sure they're being raised correctly. That I totally respect. But then women completely saying like, no, you have to stay home and you have to raise your kids. Like, no, you don't. You could totally raise your kid, have a perfect healthy relationship with them, raise them into an incredible human being, and just teach them so many more, teach them, I would say, equally the same amount of things that a woman that stays at home to raise her child, truthfully, if that's even a word, by choice, um, because like even when you're going out there every day to work, you're showing your child like what it means to be independent, to work for what you want, and to like what you need to do for your future, like how things aren't easy, like especially for even single women parents out there, single fathers. And it's just like one of those things, and I actually get into that a little bit in the next subtopic for this topic, because like um I talk about also how sometimes even fathers are better caregivers of their child than mothers when after mothers give birth. And it's just a whole other thing, because I even learned that in child psychology too.
Yo, that's mad interesting. I cannot wait. I
Yeah,
never heard of
I'm gonna
that.
get into that too a little bit more in the next part too, because
Oof.
that's pretty interesting.
I can't wait myself.
But you want to start the next one?
Yes. But yeah, Tati, you brought up some great points
Thanks.
about the Constitution and um all that. But how to be aware of issues that women still face today. So although many women's rights have progressed since everything that we have discussed so far, there's still a long way to go. So some of the many challenges women still face is fighting for equal pay. Women still earn less than on average than men. Also, fighting their roles in the house care and responsibilities. Women not allowing to take more than a month off for after childbirth, which that is a whole different, that could be a whole different topic, bro.
No, literally. We could I wish the month of March was so much longer and not because it's my birthday month, but because there's just so many things to
Yeah.
discuss.
Yeah, yeah, pink taxes. So like pink taxes, discussed this on an episode before. Um and I believe it was Como that passed the bill against this. It's just basically like um women like or feminine products are have placed more tax on compared to like masculine products like sanitary napkins or like tampons that like women use and stuff.
Yeah, that we need.
There's not that many women in the STEM field, politics, and not to mention the dangers with women. Like more women are more likely to experience assault, harassment, be victims of sex trafficking, and etc. etc. We're not saying that men don't experience like harassment or assault, but women are more likely to.
And we definitely got that into that also when we were discussing things with our sexual harassment and assault episodes, like the differences between them. We're not trying to say this to our guy listeners that, you guys could never possibly experience harassment and assault that way that women do, because sometimes guys get it a little bit more, and that definitely affects their mindset, especially if they have that toxic masculinity mindset. So I know a lot of guys that's a huge problem, and I could just imagine it as equally as I think about it for women, but it's actually a fact that women are more likely to be a victim of these situations. And yeah, so back to what Adi was saying, like, yeah, we see these few examples, like, and there's more than this, guys, that clearly still needs to be worked on. And going back into what I was saying prior, about staying at home. I don't want to go back to the pink taxes because I feel like we discussed that enough a little bit this episode. I'm still getting I'm going to break it down, guys, in the part 2 of this episode next time, when we do this in like 2 more weeks, I think. But yeah, like, women having to stay home with their kids, like, those are just things that I hate hearing, like, as a woman, because definitely, even when I was learning my child psychology and the things that really affect a child's mindset from when they're in the womb to even as young as 10 years old. And that's why I also like even discussing this brief little thing right here that I'm about to say affects me a lot when it comes to our current events, because our current events like really made me like want to cry. It was
Hmm.
just like so freaking sad, and Adi and me were talking about it. It's just so so freaking sad. But sometimes a dad will be more capable of sh- um showing a child more emotions and how to handle certain emotions than a woman, because let's not forget, sometimes there are women that are just strictly like they don't know how to communicate properly, which, there's a pro and a con to it. But in terms of raising your kids, like maybe not having that much patience, getting too easily overwhelmed, and um what's it called, sometimes the father figure, it's been seen in studies, will have that patience and will have that tolerance to be able to go through those months, those years in raising their child, in the same ways it would be if mom was at home with their kid and then waiting for their dad to come home from work. And sometimes a lot of parents find the balance between that. Sometimes a mom will work some days, sometimes the dad will work some days, like there's been multiple studies on this, guys, and that's why I say um like the thing about the women not being able to freaking take off more than a month after childbirth,
Yeah.
um
You know,
because like sometimes yeah, back to what I was saying, sorry, Adi, but like sometimes women that do want to are ready to take care of the child. First of all, it takes more than a month to heal from childbirth. I saw that firsthand from my cousin giving birth. And that first month is hell because you are adjusting and your child needs you there the most to know who is their security. And I learned this in freaking child psychology. You learn this in any kind of
Yeah.
psychology in general because believe it or not, the things that happen to you when you're as young as your first year of life will affect you later on. So
Yeah.
continue, Eddie.
Yeah, I was gonna say that my mom, when she had me and my brother, like she was already a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and she came back to work after a month.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know, like the policy what it is for teachers that work in the New York City about taking time off for
I
there's
think
a
it's
certain
3 months sometimes.
yeah, but I know for a fact my mom didn't take 3 months. So
Yeah.
I don't know if also because my mom had me like during her first year of teaching. So literally like she found out that she was pregnant like the second day of school.
Yeah, I'm not even. No, that's not funny. But wait, no, that's what I'm saying. Like I vividly remember in elementary school having teachers that are it's literally their first year or their second year, and it's like the prime time for teachers to get pregnant, I guess, because I've never seen a teacher who's been teaching for 10 years and hasn't had a child within those 10 years. But basically like they'd be pregnant, they'd be gone, and I have a substitute every day. I'm like, yo, where's Mrs. S? Yo, like bring her back. And I would be so troublesome. Our teacher would be mailing us still, um, giving us videos. And little do I know, Shadi is pregnant and needs to take some days off because of pregnancy, or the doctor says you can't be going to work anymore and being so active. And then when they do have the baby, I've had a teacher before that was gone for 3 months. I had a substitute teacher for 3 months.
Yeah, that happened to me one time.
Yeah. And
And I was
so,
also wanted to say that
mm-hmm,
when speaking about issues that women still face today, like it's important to know that, you know, black women, Asian women, Indian women, Native American women,
mm-hmm,
Latinx women, they experience like a different struggle than white women.
mm-hmm,
So like we said about the equal pay, like black women get paid less on average compared to like white women, and
yeah.
it goes on to like every like category. So that shows how gender and like race interact.
Yeah, especially because there's just so much discrimination. And not to mention, um, I also wanted to point out that all women are gonna have similar challenges because yes, we are women, but at the same time, and I said this in a previous episode back in season one, I believe, that even though yes, we all are women, we all come from different backgrounds and races and culture, and because of that culture, that's why we all have a different experience in being a black woman, a Hispanic woman, Asian woman, or an Indian woman. And because like definitely I remember I was watching this reality TV show with my cousin called Bling Empire, and it's basically about like the richest Asians in Hollywood right now. And but like one of them, you really see how Asian culture really affects her life as being a mother, and how like you can bring dishonor to just your spouse's family by just doing something wrong and not abiding by that family's culture and their beliefs. And it's just something completely different than a Hispanic thing in a way. Because even us, especially if you're a religious Hispanic, oh my goodness, freaking, you'll never hear the end of marriage before obviously intimacy, and then having kids, and how you and your family will be cursed if you don't do these things after marriage. And it's just a whole thing. So like take those two things and then think about how other women experience their struggles with their culture.
Yeah, I could relate with the Latinx culture. My mom asks me when I'm gonna get grandkids. I'm like, girl,
You see a
girl,
ring on my finger?
You're gonna wait a long time for that. That's not in my head anytime soon. Talking about
Mm-mm.
grandkids.
Yeah,
Can
literally.
I finish school first?
Yeah, I had a family friend say to me, "Oh, so when am I gonna have grandkids?" And I was just like, "I'm not even 20 yet. I highly doubt I'm even gonna have kids until I'm 26, 27. Believe it or not.
Mhm.
I definitely do not see myself having kids anytime." um, and I definitely do want a ring on my finger and married if I do have kids. But I also wanted to say, another thing I hate when it comes to like things like this with Women's History Month is the debates with birth control and all those things because
Oof. That's oof.
that I definitely feel like we do need to have an episode on this because like it's an ongoing issue that I have not personally experienced, but I have so many people around me that have experienced this and it frustrates me to the core because like it's just so annoying because like yes, in some ways you are putting yourself in that position. When it comes to intimacy, guys, like obviously, like not wearing a condom, not doing whatever. But sometimes there are really men out there that will be like, why don't you have a condom? Why aren't you on birth control? Why don't you have an IUD, like which is basically a self-implanted thing by doctors that stops you from, which is basically a birth control that you don't have to take every day, and you just have to change
Yeah.
it every few or so months. And but those things, like they don't understand, like things like birth control and those things, even like freaking a woman's condom that they have to put inside your vagina. Like these things affect our bodies negatively, and sometimes it can cause death, believe it or not. And it can affect us in our menstrual cycles if we do want kids in the future. It could stop you from having
Yeah.
kids in the future too. But I definitely think the toxic masculinity needs to stop at a certain point. And men need to start taking accountability for their actions because there should be no reason why a man knows that their sperm is so long lasting and would always put themselves in the predicament. Even old men will put themselves in the predicament to have a child knowing that they're not going to be living for another 20 years, like because they could
Yeah.
be 60, 80, and still popping out kids. Like, why? Because women, obviously, we stop having kids at a certain age, but
My
men don't stop.
Yeah. It's
So that's what I'm saying. So, but I know family friends that are obviously older, but when they found their spouse and everything, they were like, okay. The wife was like, I'm done. And they were like, okay, I'll get a vasectomy. And I think that is just so romantic. I don't know. I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if you agree, Audie, but like
Mhm.
that's just so romantic to the point where you're like, okay, like I know we're at an old age. I don't want to put your body at risk, make you do any of these things anymore to your body. But like I'll have a vasectomy. So basically what that is, guys, for those of you who don't know, which is like basically it helps a guy to not produce any more kids, basically.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Like, on a guy getting that as romantic, because for women that find it important, um, the to like bear children, like there's I understand there's women that they're not that that can't get pregnant because of
Hmm.
medical conditions or not interested in like
So sad.
bearing kids, but like for women that means a lot to them, and that plays a big role of them like identifying like as a woman, like being a woman, like that does something to like your like mental, like getting that surgery like procedure done, and you can't have kids, like that does something like to you,
Yeah.
'cause it's like
A guy saying like I will stop like
it's,
stop my ability to have a child so we can still obviously be intimate and not have any health risks in the process.
mhm,
Because not to mention also like if you do have unprotected sex or sometimes even protected sex, which is like 1% out of the time this happens, and you get pregnant and you and your partner aren't ready, Then what's next if you guys both know that you're not ready to have a child? An abortion, which is mentally, emotionally, and physically draining for a woman. And oftentimes this is just scars them. And I know so many people my age, younger, older, that have done this. And it's just like, it's just so sad. And definitely to see something like a vasectomy or something similar to even maybe a birth control for guys, I guess, to happen would be amazing, because it holds finally the guy's side accountable for their actions too, and limits them also in a way. So yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, that basically concludes our topic for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And now we're going to get into our current events, which are even more depressing.
Yeah, the current events this week, they're pretty intense. So
Yeah, the
if you want to take
last
a break,
one's not
if you want to take a break, put the thing on video or
bad.
episode on pause real quick, do what you gotta do and come back.
Yeah.
It's all good. We still gonna be here.
Yeah, say woosa, take a little quick breather. We'll still be here because these current events, they're pretty quick, but they're pretty sad. Besides the last one. The last one's a little whoop whoop, but that's it. My cousin's here watching us and she's just laughing and like nodding her head and like pumping up her fist. She's like, yes. And then that's it. But okay. Ready? You want me to say the first one or you want to say the first one?
I can say it.
Okay.
Um, so our first current event is 10-year-old boy was found beaten to death in Harlem. On Saturday, March 6th, a 10-year-old boy named Aiden Wolf was found beaten to death in his apartment in Harlem. The night before, so which was on Friday, March 5th, uh, the police received a call from an anonymous caller about hearing banging and screaming on the fourth floor of the apartment complex. And this is according to the New York Times. When officers arrived at the scene and investigated the hallway, they heard no noises and even called the number that called them through the 911, but there was no answer. After 12 minutes, they left the scene. The next day, Aiden's body was found naked in the apartment, beaten with bruises and cuts all over his body. According to the New York Times, his ribs were broken. Like, I'm having a tough time reading this because I'm just like visualizing what I'm reading. His ribs were broken, and that's what the prosecutors said. And his spleen, liver, and kidney were l-
Lacerated.
lacerated. When medics arrived at the scene, they tried to revive him, but he didn't succeed. However, police arrested and charged Ryan Catto, who was the boy's mother's boyfriend, with a murder. Turns out that he had already been arrested twice last year, and those two cases didn't work in his favor to get away with this case. He's currently in jail without bail, and he's facing a charge of second-degree murder, and he will be going to court on Monday. The police commissioner of the NYPD, Dermot Shee, stated that despite Ryan Cato being arrested, he is also directing the chief of department to review the police response on Friday to determine if the officers' actions were consistent with all the department procedures and whether our current procedures need to be revised. I had a tough time reading that, as
So
you can tell.
sad.
Like I'm just here like may may Aiden Wolf may he rest in peace.
Yeah, for real. A
Yeah.
10-year-old boy. Like, I literally just imagine a little black boy, naked as they had said. Obviously, not in an appropriate way, guys, but like just beaten up and everything. And to get into more depth about it, he has not gone back to school since before the pandemic started, which was a whole year ago. So imagine, like, he's been doing online this entire time, so he's being abused at home and everything all this time, which makes it harder for teachers to point out what's actually going on, because it's so much easier to hide bruises and cuts through a camera, especially if you're not showing your face on your camera. And that's just so freaking sad. And I don't know, like, I think about my brother or like whatever, because my parents aren't together, but my mom knows better. My mom knows better. But like to be put in that situation where like not even your parent is able to stand in for you and protect you in an instance like that, like I if that was me, I would throw myself in front of my kid and take whatever beatings I possibly could to protect them from getting hit like that. Because once the police did find his body, they were talking to people within the floor that did hear it. They I don't know if they know the specific person on that floor that heard the beatings that had originally called 911, but they basically had said that they had heard the boyfriend saying like, "Oh, do you like you really want to get beat today, right? Was yesterday not enough for you?" Like saying some other things, basically how he was basically gonna kill him and make him just like, it's just like so sad. Like he didn't even get to experience life or anything. And it's just like unreal. And it just makes me think like really like what is our world coming to, that freaking 10-year-olds are freaking dying at the hands of grown men,
Yeah.
women, like police officers, like, the fact that even 9-year-olds are getting arrested too, like, it's just like, what the heck is going on? Like,
Mm.
but may he rest in peace. And let's just have a little moment of silence for him. I want to cry. Mm. All right. Thank you. And that was really hard to like not cry on that one, because I was literally like, I just remembered doing my homework the other day when I was pulling one of my all nighters, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just got that notification on my phone. I was like, what the heck? And at first, I thought maybe it was a police incident, so that's why I was like, what the heck? Police beating up a 10-year-old kid? Nah. But then I read it and I was like, okay. But then I read into more depth about it today. So like the boyfriend's arrested, and but it's also frustrating to see that the police didn't even do more when it
Yeah.
came to investigating originally.
I'm not studying to be a police officer, but I feel like there was a way that the police could have like track the address of the phone call.
No, no, no. Yeah, agreed. And they had mentioned that one of the staff in the department had said something along the lines of, before accusing and investigating the police, these officers, why don't we see if they took these procedures? Because they could have investigated who was the caller, find out who it was. They could have went knocking on doors instead of just listening on the doors to see whatever. And before they decided to do the investigation, they went back to the report that the officers did, and they mentioned no statements of doing that. So mm, that one officer, I give them props for trying to help them out, but instead it just backfired, because you're like, okay, thanks for giving these examples of what they should have did and what they didn't do. So that just goes into doing the investigation a little bit more. But yeah, so then the next current event, which is also very sad and upsetting, which is basically the new coverage on a young black boy in Texas. So on March 10th, although this was reported on the 6th, came to light about a 13-year-old black boy. His name is I'm sorry, I don't know how to say his name right. Marion Humphrey. He was seen in a video being forced to drink his white classmate's urine. And so basically the story behind this is that he was invited by a few of his classmates, his white classmates, for a sleepover, and he had just became friends with these classmates supposedly. And that same week they invited him over for a sleepover, and he also didn't know that people that have bullied him in the past, his harassers, were also going to be invited to that sleepover. And I'm about to get into it, but like these bullies are also like a reason why he even quit the football team like last year, and it's just a whole big thing. So I'm just going to quickly quote the article a little bit because it gives some brief detail about it. So um just going there real quick. So, yeah, like I said, he was invited to this sleepover. By the way, I am quoting this from CNN. They had posted this article yesterday. But yeah, so a fellow student befriended Cimmerian and invited him to a sleepover that took place the weekend of February 12th. So this was basically already a whole month ago. Cole and Smith told CNN. Smith says Cimmerian didn't know beforehand that some of the boys who had harassed him at school would be at the sleepover. Cimmerian was called slurs, made to drink what appeared to be urine in a shot and was shot with BB guns at the sleepover that was pre-calculated and racially motivated. Um, and what's it called? Cimmerian had been harassed while he was on the football team by the same people, and he actually quit the team during the 2019 to 2020 season. According to Smith, Cimmerian reported the alleged harassment to the coach and the school counselor, but she says she felt school officials brushed it off as boys will be boys. Cimmerian is still classmates with the members of the football team who harassed him, even though he's not on the team anymore, both Smith and Colt said. And then there's actually a video of him on one of the mattresses, like, um, his hands are at his side and everything, and what's called you see in the video that he was being taunted and was being called the N-word with the hard R, and was also called homophobic slurs as well. We see that he's also getting shot with some of the BB guns, and the cell phone video that was shared by Cole shows Cimmerian being made to drink the urine cup with everybody laughing and giggling in the video. And I actually saw the video of him having to drink the urine, and he was just like trying to back up and everything, and they were just forcing it onto his lips and stuff, and it had just gotten me so tight. And then um moving on, he didn't so he Cimmerian didn't tell anybody about it when it actually happened, because the boys had threatened him, and he didn't go back to school until the week of February 22nd because of snowstorm from the week before. Back at school, he was asked by a classmate if he really drank the urine, and then Cole told CNN that Cimmerian didn't initially remember the alleged urine incident because that night he took sleep aid medication for his anxiety. The classmate then showed him the video that was being shared around the school, the attorney said. Cimmerian also didn't tell the principal of what happened at the sleepover until last week when officials were made aware of the videos, according to Cole, and then the school informed the mother. Um, and
Wow.
then
So
yeah,
I could imagine like that whole week in that snowstorm, and I'm guessing the boy stayed at home. Him like suffering emotionally and physically suffering for what happened, and not telling anybody, like keeping that to himself like for a whole week. Wow.
that's a whole psychological thing right there on another level. Like having to like, it's just it's just hard to I I can't even like have words for it, but you know what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. Like it's just like you wouldn't think that that would happen, and then it happens, and then it's just like how do you handle it? And especially for a 13-year-old kid, believe it or not, some kids really don't know like what is common sense, and common sense is obviously not that common, but sometimes first off, you can in ways to help cope with an incident that has happened to us. Sometimes our memories, our brain suppresses it, or two, it rewrites it into a completely different memory, into whatever will help us cope with it. And it's things like that where that's not where boys will be boys. Like, no, that's harassment. And in some ways assault, because I had also read that there was possible intimate fondling that was not consented, and it's just not appropriate for 13-year-old kids to be doing that, and it's just like where are the parents, you know?
Yeah.
So then adding on the 10th, which was yesterday, the Plano Independent School District, which is where they all go to school, opened an investigation on the case with the superintendent stating incidents like this affect our whole community. I want to let our community know that the Plano ISD, which is also an abbreviation for the school, does not and will not tolerate bullying or harassment and believes every student must be treated with dignity and respect. There were also rallies and protests in the community to show their support for Samarian, which he had said made him feel empowered and ready to get justice. He even made a sign with the BLM fist saying "Justice for me," and it was pretty cute, but that's so
Yeah,
sad.
that story has a lot of layers. I hope the students they get punished, whatever the suspension or
Hmm.
whatever. They learn from their actions and hopefully not do it again to other students.
Yeah.
Hopefully they find healing in themselves too.
Yeah, for real.
And
Because, like, what's going through your mind as a 13-year-old kid to think that it's funny to be doing all those things, forcing them to drink pee, calling them racist names and everything, doing
also,
doing all these inappropriate things. I'm like, okay, like that's what makes you see that like all these hates of violence and all these things that are really going on in the world and how you raise your kids, how you're there in your kids' lives, and even the people you allow in your kids' lives, like really affect them at such a young age because this next generation that's coming up after us, they're so fast paced and they're so involved in the media that I literally had no control over my brother even seeing how George Floyd died because he saw it on TikTok. It's like, what the heck? And it's just what needs to be done because if they're doing this as young as 13, imagine what they're going to be doing once they're in high school. And that's a
yeah,
whole other level of violence because now they're bigger, they're stronger, and,
they
you know,
learn more
you
things.
learn more. And this is also not going to affect you in the moment, but it's going to affect your future too. Like, you know? And believe it or not, it's a known fact, but even in the moment of bullies doing this, most of them are suicidal. And I kind of want to get into that too in another topic, maybe about bullies, but a lot of bullies have been known to be suicidal. And after some time of them realizing their actions or just being too overwhelmed with their lives, um, a lot of them have been said that they were once bullies and consider suicide. And it's kind
Yeah.
of crazy because it's like all this to get to this point.
Yeah, I also want to know who the hell was like supervising the sleepover. Like, bro, whoever was in charge of that sleepover, that get together needs
Should
to
be
be
held
held accountable.
responsible.
Like, what? Like, I understand they were 13 and 13, like, you can stay home alone already at that age, but co-
Had my mother, my friends' mothers coming in saying, okay, guys, it's time to go to bed, or at least around us with the door open or somewhere near us to see what we were doing. Okay. And it doesn't matter if you're whispering, whatever, you still need to make sure you're near kids because at that age, kids are experimenting. People think things are okay. Clearly, they're not. And they think they're being quiet. But no, sometimes a parent is gonna wake up and be like, I hear whispers, time to go to bed. Do I need to separate you guys? Like, that's just proper parenting and discipline and making sure that things are, you know, going
yeah,
along well. Like, you stop worrying about being the cool parent in situations like that. Because once that happens, what are you gonna fill it with? Regret. At least check up on your kids every few or so minutes, even in the middle of the night, to see if they're sleeping okay and to make sure everybody's breathing, you know? So, because you're held accountable for whoever's there that also isn't your kids.
yeah, since they are in your home. So
Hmm.
that's a whole lot to unpack there, and we'll see what happens when the investigation pulls through.
Yeah. So, next one, Adi. Take it away.
Yeah, we're gonna end off with a positive note. We kind of said this in our last episode, but this is the official current event. President Biden officially signs the COVID-19 relief package. He was supposed to sign it on Friday, March 12th.
He did it
But he
earlier. He
signed
said
it
yesterday.
early because he know this shit is urgent. So today, March 11, President Joe Biden signed the 1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill passed by the U.S. House of Representatives. This approval allows stimulus checks and vaccine aid across the U.S., similar to we have said in our most recent episode about the stimulus check, providing eligible Americans up to 1,400. and also extend emergency unemployment benefits. So now officially that the bills pass, people who are eligible will get them stimmy soon, whether you got direct deposit or the check, da da da.
Direct deposit. That direct deposit be catching you at 3 a.m. Like, hold up. You get that notification on your phone, like, oh, deposit of more than $100 to my account. It's not even payday. What could it be? Oh, a stimmy check. I know
Yeah.
Adi's hype. She's been,
Yeah. I didn't get the other stimmies, but I'm eligible for this one, so when
oh,
I see that I'm
must
gonna
be
be lucky.
nice.
Yeah.
I'm still crying about it, but that's life. Because I'm like, damn. Even next year, when I am able to apply for a stimulus check, I can't. I'm not getting a stimulus check. When I do file for my taxes next year independently, I won't even be getting the stimulus check because it's the last one.
Yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, but soon you're gonna be finally independent, and then that's when real adulthood is gonna
Oh
hit.
yeah, but
Mm.
listen, I would not be complaining if that stimulus check hit me. I could have gotten a new car already. Not gonna lie. But yeah, guys. So thank you for coming to this week's episode. Anyway, thank you
Thank you.
everybody for coming to listen to this week's episode. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, listening to us on Apple, Spotify, whatever it is, thank you so much for listening and being with us for this last hour.
Yeah, so thank you all for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a rating and guys like a review as well if you can. And we'll catch you all in the next episode next week.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.